Okay, yeah, peace greeting to everyone watching this video. So, I'm here to talk about React hooks. Then I will be using W3 Schools as our guide, as our documentation book to explain React hooks. Hooks allow functions components to have access to state. So, you might be thinking, okay, what is hooks, what is function component, what is state? If you have a basic knowledge about React, you will know that there are two components which we have in React. Is either we have a functional component or a class component. So inside the class component, it is easy for us to make use of, but it is easy for us to do all those to manage state. But in a functional component, we can manage state in a functional component. That is why React hooks comes in order to access us, in order to help us to make access to a state. And a state is like is let me say is a data that can change in a component. That is, when something can change, a state is something that can change in a component. So that is what we mean by state. So for us to change a component, we need a class component, we need a class component. But now we can't do that on functional components. That is why React hooks comes in order for us to write a state in a functional component. So we can see, because of class components are generally no longer needed, so you don't need to write a class component before you can manage a state. So we can also do that using React component. Okay, so we have hooks allow us to hook into React features. So we have such as state and life cycle method. So we also have a lot of things in which we have to make use of when we are dealing with React. So what is all this? I think I've run this page. So it has a lot of functions in which we make use of. So what did I have here? Oh, I'm very sorry, this ought not to be there. So I have already run a React application. So the process is very straightforward. You just start with npm run React app. Npm start React app is going to load it and is going to run this package for you. So I've cleared everything, so in order to not waste much of our time, so I have this as my opening page. And now whenever you want to use any features, any React hooks, React does not require you installing any package. You can see there's no package, there's nothing to manage, there's nothing to write about in React hooks. So all what you just have to do is you have to import it at the top, any type of reacting which you want to do. So once you import it at the top, you will make use of them. So we have a lot of them which you can go through. So I will go through the few ones which I, for this course of learning, which I know is mostly important and is good for us to learn. So we have them. So if you import it at the top, then you'll be able to make use of them. So we have hooks with our hooks rules. So hooks also have its own rules in which we should always follow. Number one, hooks can only be called inside React functions. That is, you can only call them inside React functions, not that you call them outside the function. You can't call them outside the function. You have to make sure you call them inside the function. I'm going to tell you more about calling them inside the function, not outside the function. When you have it in this form, like what they mean like calling them inside, this is the function start from here where we have function, so you can call it inside here. So you can call it outside at the top here, or you call it outside the function here. So you type something here, you are calling it outside the function, so you have to call it inside the function. So that's what they mean by that. So we also have hooks can only be called at the top of the component. So you can also call it at the top of the component. Maybe you have designed your component. You can, okay, if you already have your divine page, you can decide to call it at the top of your component. Now this component now is app component. I can decide to call it at the top by creating another function and name it Vic. So I can name it Vic. I'm creating another function, then I want these functions to return maybe a word, anything you want it to return, then you can call it inside here. But now I've not talked about any React hooks. That is why I will not go further in order to do that. I want to explain what they mean by React and how it works. So since I've not talked about any React, so you can create another function at the top, then you call it inside here. But you cannot create a function on its own, maybe a React function. You cannot create a state inside here. Now you cannot create a state at the top here and expect it to work inside here. It's either you create a function for it, then put your state inside it and let it work. So that is how it works, so you understand more better. And the last one is hooks cannot be conditional. That is, you cannot use if statement in order to make use of your hooks. So, and also we have the custom hooks. Maybe you can create your own hooks and make use of it in other functions. So now the first hooks which I would like to talk about is the useState hooks. You see, this useState hooks is very important, because I don't know how you want to become a developer or a React developer and you will not make use of React hooks, because it allows us to track state in a functions component, and state generally refers to data or property needed to be tracked. Okay, you can also use that word. So there are data that can be tracked. Maybe you want to change your state, you want to change the state, so you can track them in order to change them, because if you did not get track, you cannot change. Now the way of using it is we have to import it at the top. That's the first thing, you have to import it at the top. So once you import the useState at the top, you'll be able to make use of it. So now if I want to make use of it at my app component here, I can let me just copy this and copy the useState. If you have, you can copy everything that we have, or you put it this way. So it means that I've imported the useState. Now look at, after that you can write your useState, initialize what you have, your useState. We initialize the state by calling the useState if our functions component is needed. So useState accepts initial and return value, that is the original value and what value that will come up next. So if you look at this example now, they created a state inside here. That is, the state has an empty string. It has color and set color. So now once you have color and set color, it means that this is the initial value, the color is the initial value, and the return value is the set color. So you can see they say the first color is the current state, while the second set color is the updated one. Maybe you want to update some things and you want it to have an initial value, so you can easily have it that way. Now let's now deal with one example in order to make use of it. So let's have this. Let me create this inside this particular place. I'm creating a state here. The state has color and the set color. If I want to call this initial set color, I can easily access it. This is how to create a state. That is, I've created a state for color and set color. The first one is the initial color, and this one is the return color, the return value. Maybe I want to make some changes. The color should turn to blue, the color should turn to red, or you should do some other functionalities at the back. So now I can decide to call it here. Let me copy this h1 which they have here and paste it inside this my. Now I created an h1 and I called the color. If you want to write HTML inside, if you want to write a JavaScript code inside HTML, you have to use this curly bracket. So if I check what I have now, I should see my favorite color is red. That is the initial value. So let's now assume that okay, we can still do some other things. Maybe we want to change the color by an event. So that is when we can now deal with the updated state that we have here. Okay, we want to set that color from red to another color. So that is, we want to update it through some other means. So for us to do that, I can create a button and I say that okay, this button, you can update the state from this color to another color. So this button now, this button is going to have I created a button tag, and the button has a type which is button. Then if you want to do if you want to make an action, a button to listen to an event in React, you have to use onClick. So once you use onClick, you are going to create a callback function. That is, this is a callback function that okay, I want to call this set color. I want to change it to blue. So once you write it this way properly, then everything can be on a straight line. Just depend on you if you want to refactor your work or you want to make your code neat. So you can have it in this form. I can have the button in that form. So it will be more clearer this way. Like me having the button, and the button is close tag. We have the type to be button. On click is going to have a callback function. That is, I'm setting this color now, the new color it should have, to blue. So if I check what I have here, then you can see this is the button. Once I click on it, it changed to blue. So that is how it's going to return back to initial color after refreshing. So once I refresh, it return back to initial color, and if I click on this blue again, it's going to turn it to blue. That is the reason why we need a state component, a useState hooks, in order to do a lot of things. Because when you are dealing with something like this, you have a lot of things to update. Maybe you have a data you want to keep on updating with time, and you will learn how to do it easily using useState hooks. So we also have, maybe you have a lot of data, maybe an object, how to do multiples, how to use multiples state, or yes, let me say how to use a multiple object. If you have an object and you want to make use of them in state, maybe you want to change some state. So this is how we are going to run it now. Okay, let me make use of this functional component here. So I want to create another function now. This is the second rule. It says this place The second one say hook can allow to be called at the top level of a component. Now I want to create another function. I want to name it car. Let me use this one. I want to name it car. So once I name it car, I want to have the car and the set car. That is the initial and the what? The return value. Maybe if I want to make an update. So inside this an update, I want to have useState. So inside this useState, I will create an object instead for me just having a single string the way it is here. Instead for you creating the brand separate, the model separate, the year separate, I can decide to make use of an object. So using an object here, I'll just have the brand equals to Ford, the model equals to Mustang, the year equals to this, and the color equals to red. Then I want to call a return value. So the return value should have my car dot brand, so it should point out those things for me, and we should have it is a car color, car model. So it's going to come to this place, the car dot color, so it's going to print out red. Car dot model is going to put down Mustang. Car dot year is going to print out 1995. So let me copy this function so I will not waste much of my time typing. So now I can use this function here. I can decide to create it at the top here. Yes, I will take away this one because I have created an entire function at the top. Now inside this function, how can I use it? I can decide to use this function as, okay, what is the name of the function? It's car. The name of the function I created is what? Car. So how do I know the name? It is not something you have to memorize. This is the function name, which is what? Car. So once I call this car, is my app.js that is going to run everything which I have as car. So if I check now, you will see it's going to print out all the initial value. You can see my Ford, it is red color. Now let's now assume I want to update this value. Now there are two things which is important in order for us to do an updating in an object. Number one, we are going to use the set car to blue, but when we are doing it, there's a note that when state is updated, the entire state gets overwritten. That is, if you update one, let's assume I update only this brand, they update only this color to blue, is going to overwrite everything. So they have to what? They have to use a JavaScript spread operator in order not to overwrite this thing. That is why you have to create another const inside it, and the spread operator is this 3 dots. You type 3 dots and your previous state. Now, so what have they done? They created another callback function which is called update color, because it's color they want to update. They created the callback function which is what? Update color, and they set the color. Now the second one, now set the color, so you use previous state equals to, the previous state is red, so we are targeting the previous state, and the callback function should return with 3 callback functions. You have to put a spread operator so that we can have the previous state equals to color, and we change it to blue. So let's do something like that, and let's see how we are going to achieve, maybe we are going to get what we want to do. So inside this state now, let me just copy this update number, update color here, and let me have it in my functional component of car. Then once I have something like this, I can easily change maybe probably we are going to have a button to update the color. The color cannot update without a button, so let me get the button to update that color. So let me put it inside there. So this button will be updated. Now once I click on blue, it's changed to what? Blue. So if I refresh now, it is red before. So if I click on this, I can change the year too. So if I want to change the year, still the same process. All you just have to do is to create another callback function here. So don't let me be typing all this. So I will copy it. I will change the initial stuff which I want to change. Update year. Let me use year now. So I will now say, how do we type the year? So the year is like this. Yeah. So I'll set the year to 2025. I think nothing to change again here. So update year. Okay, then I'll come to this place. I'll create a button. So the button will now be update year. I've created a callback function here, which is this. Let me say year. So if I come to this place, you can see if I click on year, the year changed to 2025. So that is how to manage the React state in hooks. So this one is really important for us to be changing, in which we'll be making use of. So another one is React useEffect. So for us to use useEffect allows us to perform a side effect on your component. Maybe you want to be checking some side effects. Maybe when you are side effect like fetching data, maybe the data have reached where it's supposed to reach, updating the DOM, and also timer. Maybe you want something to be happening after 1 minute, you want something to be happening after 10 minutes. So some example also side effect is fetching data, directing updating the DOM without using get element by ID, and also the timer. So those are the one of the good effects of using it. So use effect allow two arguments. It also allow function argument and dependency. That is when it should work, and how it should work, maybe after 10 minutes. So this one is okay, we want something to happen now, and after how many minutes will it happen. So that is the difference between the two. So we use the other one to set a timer in order for us to make use of it. So now for us to have a good example for a use effect, we have to make use of we have to import it at the top too as a use effect, and we can make use of it there. So this is what I will do. Let me create a file called timer. Oh, okay, let me create a component first. Let me create a component first. Let me create pages. So inside these pages, let me create a file called timer. No, it's supposed to be timer.js. So it's supposed to be timer.js. Okay, now I've created it inside component. Okay, now so I have a timer. So now the next thing I have to do is, I don't want to tamper this app.js. I'm going to leave this one this way, maybe probably I can later take it away. So now I want to deal with the use effect. So I'm creating a new brand for it. I can take away this and created inside this place. I can create, I want to make my app.js clean. I can create a page called car.js. So I can cut away all this. Can take away this function here. Then I come to this place. So instead of having this one here, I will replace it with this. Created the function as a full details. Then here I'm going to import useState. Okay, so I can take away this one. I think it's cool like this. So I've taken it away from that place. So this one will be a page for my use state. Then inside this place, I don't think I need this again. I don't need this use state. I will just come and import car from. Okay, the car is not inside pages. Okay, the car is outside. So let me check, maybe I've altered anything or I still have mine. Okay, that's good. So everything still work fine. So that's good. So let me go to my use effect. So I've created a timer for my use effect because I think it is a timer stuff they do here. So the first thing is I will have to import useState because there's a function for count and set count. So inside the useEffect project. So here, let me take away this car. So this timer now, I'll first of all import the useState and the useEffect. So the next thing we have is to have a function component. So if I copy this, I can replace this with my own function component which I have here. Yes, I think we are still on same page. So here what have they done is that we create a function called timer. It's the same thing we have, and we set a count, and we said the initial count should be 0. So now we want to use useEffect. So useEffect has to be inside the function. So it has to be inside the function, which is useEffect, create a callback function, and we set a timeout to be what? Set a timeout. So once we set a timeout, there will now be a count. The new state count now should equals to the previous count plus 1. So the other one, which is dependency, that is, it depends after 1000 seconds, it should change the number. So now what I will do is I will now have to come to my app.js here. I'm going to import timer. So I'm going to have timer here too as well. So once I have my timer here and I've imported it at the top, so if I check my app.js, you can see the timer keep on rendering after 1000 seconds, which is 1 minute. So we keep on increasing. So if I change the number here, maybe to 2000, it will be more slower than expected than what we have here. You see, the number is not counting the way it should count before, but it will still keep on counting. So he has to wait for that time. You can see the number is now slow. So the first one for the use effect is dealing with setting the dependency for the time and the function, what we want it to do. That is what the use effect is all about. So you can see from our code here, we have, okay, we want it to do this thing here, and we want it to do it at this particular time. That is how use effect works. So we can still do so, but with counting, though it should be what only count once. Use effect runs on every render, so that means the count changes, a render happens, which then trigger another effect. This is not what we want. There are several ways to control the side effect, so we can control it in different ways. We should always include second parameters with which depend in arrays. So the arrays which I created here, you can see I changed it from I try to control the side effect from this my time, so it will reduce. That is why you can see run your use effect, run only on first render, and displays to determine the state of how it should run. So if you look at these other examples now, you can see they try to work on it and also use same thing for our use effect. So you can keep on using use effect for maybe any work, any project, like this one now, like this project here now, like this another one. They create a function called counter, and the counter is doing two things. They added a button which one is counting and the other one is doing another calculation. So they use this count to do two things. Now they try to control it. They created two states. Okay, let's run something like this. Let me create a file called counter so we can do the same thing. Let me use JSX now. So now, okay, so I will just copy the code. I'll add okay, then let me just take away these functions which they have created for okay. So inside here, I'll come to this place and include counter. So we have this. You can see now. Now let's now go through the code. I think this is the last aspect for this use effect. So they are using it. The first thing they did is we created a function called counter. Then we have to set the counter to 0. We want to do another calculations, we set the counter to 0. So I created my use effect here. What does my use effect do? Set the calculator count equals to times 3. That is this one. Anytime you see set calculator, it should multiply it by 3, and it should what? The other one is what? Counting. And this count 1, 2, 3. So now when you get to where we want to run it, instead for us to, this set count at the top, we did not do anything. We just name it to what? We just set an array for it to count. Then that one will be counting in 1, 2, 3. Then when this button is clicked, both this count and this set count should add +1. But you know that this other set count, we have added to be a what? Multiplication. So whenever it sees this other set count, it's going to multiply it by 2, and this one is going to add it by 1. So that is how we can have the first one to the count, the second one is to what? Times 2. So if I click on this button, this one is 1, this one is 2. If I click on this one, 2, 4. The first one is counting, the second one is multiplying. That is how to make use of our use effect. So we can clean up our code in order to do more. Now, the fourth one which I want to talk about is the React use context hook. You see, this use context hooks is one of the great tools in which we are going to use, especially these 4 we are talking about. You keep on using them. So we use this React context to manage our state globally. It can be used together with what? With the state. Hooks to share state between dependently nested components. Now, this is the best way to explain our React hooks. Do I have a picture? Now let's assume, okay, let me check, maybe I can see a picture that can talk about it here. Let's assume we have a tree. Now this PSD, now let's assume I want to use this PSD is a React application. Now this is how it works. If you look at this PSD, we have the JS, we have the HTML, we have the CSS. Let's assume under this JS we have another 2. Under this React we have another 2. Under this CSS we have another 2. Now this is the parent one, this PSD, that is controlling all of them. Let's now assume I want to pass a data from this PSD to the one under. You know, normal way of passing data is by using props. Yes, let's assume we have this one to have 2 2. This HTML have another 2 2. This CSS have another 2 2. Let's now assume from this PS I want to pass something to this one under. You know, imagine me, if I want to pass it normally, I will have to pass through HTML. HTML will give it to JS, we give it to CSS, and I don't need to pass it through this one. I'm taking it down to those ones. So I have to keep on passing. But when it comes to React context, you can pass from this one to the one under. So it makes life easier for us in order in passing what? Data from the parent to the child. So anyone you want to move to, they can easily pass through them. So that is how it really works. So when it comes to that is just the basic and the simple way of using React context. So now we are going to use that React context to solve a problem now. So we are going to have a file in which we are going to pass data from one data to another. So now let's kickstart with one of the examples. You can see what they have done here. They have useState. They create now there are 3 steps that we have to follow in React context. Number 1, we have to create it, we have to provide it, then we have to use it. Now let's now see how it works. The first thing is creating a React context. So now for us to use a React context, we have to create it first. So by importing it, that's the normal way of using any React component. So now in my app.js here, I want to create a React context so I can make use of it. I can use this one as my parent and pass it to others. So now for me to do that, I will have to use let me use it here. Let me copy this and have it in my app.js. So it means I have state and I also have React context here. So the next thing is I have to provide it context API, and for you to provide it you have to wrap everything in your return value with user context provider. Yes, another thing is after you create it here, you have to call it using user create react context. We have to call it, don't always forget that. So after this calling we still have another thing we have to do. Anywhere we want to use it, we have to still export it out from that place. So this means that I've created it here, too as well. These two here, it means that I've created it. So now for me to export it out for them to use. So for here I will need to export so that it can be make use of in another place. So now I've created it here and I've exported it. So the next thing which is important for me to do is to provide it. How do I provide it? I will have to wrap it with this thing. It has to have user context dot provider. So now let me create a state. Let me copy this state I have here. Is this state I want to go and provide in another file. So I want to provide this state in another file. So let me create this state. I'll put it inside my function. Now let me first of all turn this to, let me go and get my creation of user context. Control C. Let me copy this. I want to test something. Okay, inside this I'll first of all have I want to use my fragment. Then after that I want to have this. Okay, I can only let me just use this at all. Let me just put this here. Then I'll take away this. Now it means what have I done here is, okay, I don't want to alter this too. Maybe I can still, if I'm having little issues, I can take it away and use it for user context. Now this is what I've done here. Is like, okay, I want to call this I created a state called and a user state called JC Hall. So I've created it and I've used it. Now let's now assume I want to use it in any of this page. Let's assume I want to use it in another page now. I can decide to create multiple folders here. If I create multiple folders, I will still use it directly. It doesn't have any other means or any other ways. You just have to go to where you want to use it to, then call it at the top. So now the third one is how to use. So if I want to use it in another place now, I will have to import this, which is the use state, the create context, and the use context from React. This is the last aspect which I have to use it. So let's assume I want to use it in any of this let me use it in this timer. Or let me create another one for this one and call it let me call it used.js. So inside this one now, let me create another one for it, so I will know that I'm doing it separately. Okay, now I want to use it inside this file. I don't mind about other files, so let me use it there. So after importing it here, my function is going to have this, which is going to be what I've created. So this is going to be this is going to be not component, is going to be used, because it is used I have. So it's going to be used. So inside it I create a constant which is called a user. So instead for me to make use of any other thing in my app.js here, I will convert this one to used. Don't forget, I'll convert this one to used because I've called the value user here, and I've created the value of the user is JC Hall. So I've put the value here, which is this initial value here. So I'm calling it hello users, hello this. So if I just want to say, okay, I want to use it in primarily any other place, and I've called it out here to be used. So it's going to provide the value for me in this used, and it's going to display it out for us. So let's check. Use is not defined. Oh, I have not imported it. I have not imported it here in my app.js. So I will come to the top and say import used from pages. Where do I have to? Okay, in my used. Oh, wait. Okay, let me check. Line 5 to 27 is not user context, is not divine. User context is not divine. Okay, user context is not divine. Let me check. User context. In my used, user context is not divine. Okay, I think I have to wrap this up with our user context. Let me check. Okay, I have to wrap it up with this user context provider. So it has to return this user context provider here. Okay, let me copy this, then I have it here. Oh, okay, I will see to this thing. I don't really want to waste much time here. I will see to it. I will check. And I've wasted more time. Let me check how many minutes I've spent. Okay, 48 minutes. Okay, I will start from this place next class. I will start from this React contest. So maybe I don't want to waste much time. User contest. This is how it should look like. Just a little thing. I've exported it out. Create my app.functions. Okay, let me stop here. I'm going to upgrade it. I'm going to start from this way I stop in next class. I will do another one immediately to complete the useRef.